It's whiskey time. Greetings, whiskey folk, and welcome back to Drinking Out Loud, where I am about to indulge in the 144th Scotch Malt Whisky Society of Canada Outturn. And yes, you're right, I'm back to the old format. I had several people say that although they understand the YouTube algorithm likes the shorter little videos, they prefer the long form. So I hope you're all ready for a full Outturn video, and what an Outturn we have for you here today. We're celebrating the spooky season, as you saw with the graphic behind me there, and we've got some, well, we don't really have any spooky whiskies, because I'm not sure what a spooky whiskey would be, but we do have a whiskey that is coming to us from beyond the grave, and we're actually going to start with that one. Today we're starting with, consult the book, Exceedingly Exquisite. At first nosing, the panel noted such aromas as manuka honey, sandalwood, lemon balm, and overripe yellow fruits. A beautiful and exquisitely mature profile, we all agreed. Further notes of apple blossom, scone mix, and fennel seeds were all detected. With water, we got heather flowers, mossy tree bark, flower pollens, sun lotion, and crystallized citrus fruits. In time, a firmer, waxy tone developed. In the mouth, it displayed a soft, peppery warmth, with notes of white tea, buttered toast, waxed canvas, and oily cereals. Rich notes of honey, menthol tobacco, and dried mango followed. Reduction brought lime jelly, heather honey, sweetheart stout, citrus marmalades, and sweet yellow plums. A gorgeous dram. At 22 years of age, we combined selected casks from the same distillery. We then returned the single malt into a variety of different casks to develop further. And this is one of those casks. Okay. I am very excited to be sharing this dram with you here on the video, because it means that I get to try it for a third time. Lucky me. We've already had both Outturns at this point, and I am, I'm looking forward to trying all these whiskies again. This is a stellar dram, and it's from a closed distillery. It's rare that we get to try whiskies from closed distilleries, but it's always a treat when we do, because it's a little slice of history. And speaking of little slices of history, love the reference to Sweetheart Stout in the tasting notes. I used to love having a little tiny bottle of Sweetheart Stout. It's for those of you who haven't spent much time in Scotland, it's a bit of a weird thing to explain to a North American market, because for some reason in North American market, beer is almost all like 5.5% to 6%. That's not normal in the UK, and Sweetheart Stout is a light beer, even by British standards. I think it's like 2% alcohol or something. But it's just a little sweet stout, and it comes in these little tiny bottles, and they've always had the same label on since they've gone. It's got like a World War II era like illustration of a pinup girl on it, I think. Yeah, it's Really, really interesting beer. But I have to admit, my Midlands is showing a little bit because I am actually from England, not Scotland. I prefer Mackerson Stout. It's better. Same kind of idea, though. All right. So, exceedingly exquisite. 38.34, one of 221 bottles. It is from the Speyside region. It was distilled on the 26th of July, 1996. The initial cask was an ex-bourbon barrel, and it was then, or rather, several ex-bourbon barrels, and then vatted together in a second fill ex-bourbon barrel as well. Came out at 50.6% ABV, and is totally aged for 25 years. All right, well, time to pour. This is just a really interesting distillery from a story as well. It's one of those distilleries that was built a long time ago, actually a really long time ago in this one's case, to be basically a second distillery to an existing one. So this is originally Glen Grant 2. Yeah, and actually I've got some dates. I'm very terrible at remembering dates here. It was founded in 1898. I should remember that one because a lot of distilleries were founded in 1898. But it closed in 1902. However, it didn't completely step out of the whiskey game because it was right next to Glen Grant, so they retained its malting floors and used them for the production of Glen Grant for, well, the next several decades, all the way up until 1965 when it was reopened, because at that point, Glen Grant was hugely successful, especially in the Italian market. It was one of the first ever single malts to be sold by the bottle. Yeah. In 1967, it was so sought after that they expanded. They doubled the capacity of Glen Grant 2. And in 1977, they had to rename it because I believe at the time the SWA passed a law saying that they had to, you had to have a completely separate name. So things like Kleinlich that had like Kleinlich 1 and Kleinlich 2 changed one of them to Brora. And in this one's case, Glen Grant 2 became Caperdonach. It, however, unfortunately closed in 2002. But it still, even after all that, retains a little bit of its whiskey-making sense of self, because the location of Caperdonach is now the location of Forsyth's Copper Works, who are the biggest still manufacturers in Scotland and abroad, actually. In fact, there are at least 4 Forsyth stills that I know of here in British Columbia, and they're all on the island as well. So there's 2 at McAloney's Caledonian and 2 at Shelter Point. Were probably actually built on the grounds where this whiskey was distilled, which is super cool. Yeah, really, really neat. All right, what am I getting today? It's interesting that it has this sort of almost sourdough nose on this one. It feels like a sourdough bagel on the nose. With some kind of light, I'm getting sort of orchard fruit, maybe apricot jam on a sourdough bagel. Yeah, it's lovely. Overripe yellow fruits, sandalwood. Yeah. Oh, the fennel seed. I remember the fennel seed was an interesting note that a lot of people at the in-person tastings found on this one. Not so sure I got the whole mossy tree bark, but it does say after water. So I'll have a sip and then I'll put some water in and we'll see if I can find some mossy tree bark. That's really nice. Custardy. Very custardy, actually, on the palate. So, truth be told, I'm currently recording this at about 6:30, and it's been just a long day at work, and I'm really happy to be drinking a whiskey right now. I think even if this wasn't a great whiskey, I'd be enjoying it immensely, but I'm enjoying it even more because it is a pretty great whiskey. I mean, I've got to be honest, it's not my favourite from the Outturn. And Caperdonach has always been a distillery that I've found really interesting and really, really good distillate, but not necessarily my personal favourite, which is fine. But it is really, really popular with a lot of people. And it's been popular so far here in BC at the in-person tastings. We only have 1 bottle left to sell online, which I probably should mention. Hi, I sell whiskey. My name's Adam, and all of these are available for a very limited time only at strathliquor.com/SMWS, where you'll see details for all of this month's new Outturn. And you can get tickets for next month's Outturn too. So, speaking of which, I should mention the price, shouldn't I? So, it's a black label, it's a closed distillery, take all that into account, and we end up with the number $812.96. So it is definitely one of those whiskies where the price is, inflated because of the rarity. So if this isn't the style of whiskey that you would normally drink, might not be the best time to try a new whiskey from a style of whiskey that you don't normally drink. But if you, like many people, are diehard Caperdonic fans, or this is very much the style that you enjoy, give it a try. If you can. Like I said, only one bottle left, and frankly, by the time most people are watching this video, it will be long gone, and I'm very sorry about that. From what I understand, Caperdonic had pretty large stocks when it closed down, though, was it 2002? Yeah. So there might still be some more floating around. We might see another SMWS Caperdonic in a few years, but it ain't going to get cheaper, I'll tell you that. An absolute delight, a pleasure to have another opportunity at this wonderful closed distillery. But really interestingly, our second whiskey today is a whiskey from a distillery that I think most people have heard of. And we've never had one in the SMWS Canada. Yeah, and I, up until this point, actually, and up until Thursday's tasting, had never had a cask-strength whiskey from this distillery, or an independently bottled whiskey of any kind from this distillery. I'd only had one or two of the official bottlings, and I didn't really care for it that much until Thursday, where I felt a little bit of a stab to the heart of, you've been missing this in your life all these years. Now I know what I've been missing. I'm going to be hunting more of this one down. Whiskey number 2 today is Sweetly Modern. First nosing indicated a richly sweet profile full of butterscotch, Highland toffee, and milk chocolate buttons. Beyond that, we also got a touch of violet liqueur, porridge sweetened with strawberry jam, and also orange peel. Some water-revealed Manuka honey, sweet rice pudding with nutmeg, boiled citrus sweets, manila envelope, and menthol tobacco. Envelope, interesting tasting note. Neat, the palate displayed plenty more gooey sweetness with banana bread, dark chocolate, cloves, cardamom pastries, and barley sugars. Reduction brought a mellow and easy mouthful, along with pink peppercorn fruitiness, dried flowers, baked apples, and custard with a splash of lemonade. This is the Giving Spirit bottle of the season. 100% of SMWS Canada's profits from the sales of this bottle will go to the Canada-Ukraine Foundation, which is, of course, a very appropriate place for donations to be going right now. So thank you, Kelly and Rob, for choosing the Canada-Ukraine Foundation. And actually, a huge shout out to Kelly and Rob for carrying on this Giving Spirit program. But also, I just want to point out that they're not just using it as a way to sell whiskey that wouldn't otherwise sell. This is a very easy to sell whiskey that they knew was going to sell out probably really quickly because we've never had one before, yet still they're choosing this whiskey as the Giving Spirit program. And I think that speaks volumes to how much they believe in the program, and it's not a sales technique, it's just giving back to the community. So yeah, kudos Kelly and Rob, that's amazing. But I'm just going to press pause a second on this whiskey because I talked about adding water to the first whiskey and seeing if I can find some mossy tree bark, and I never did. So I'm just going to grab my last glass, add some water, and quickly see if I can find mossy tree bark, because I frankly should have been adding water, but just kind of forgot. Like I said, been a long day. Any mossy tree bark on the nose? Nope. I'm just getting more caramel. Nope, not sure where the mossy tree bark's coming into it. I'm not finding that, but someone did, and that's great because everyone's experience of every whiskey is always going to be completely different. Let me know in the comments if you did manage to try this whiskey at one of the various tastings around the country. Tastings in places like, I don't know, Kensington Wine Market over in Calgary, Keg and Cork in Edmonton, or maybe even Legacy in Vancouver. And sometimes Sometimes you can go to Kelowna, to Arc as well. Not this month, though. Next month. All right. Yeah. No, I'm definitely not getting the mossy tree bark. But if you did, let me know. I'd love to find out how prevalent that is. Because for me, that stood out in the tasting notes as something that is kind of wildly different to everything else. Anyway, time for a fresh glass. Time for dram number 2. Been looking forward to trying this one again. It's great to have an excuse to try this one again, because this may well have been... Oh, no, but then there's that one as well. It's definitely one of my favourites in this Outturn. Where it ranks, I'm not entirely sure. Probably depends what day it is. All right, so what are the particulars on the bottle of this one? Ooh, it's a Highland whiskey. It's from the 10th of September 2013. It is cask number 60.31. So it's a relatively well-known distillery, as I mentioned. I think most people would have heard of this one. It's actually even, the official bottling is available behind the bar at the Sticky Wicket of all places. That's how prevalent it is. 288 bottles they got out of the cask, 9 years aged, came out at 60.1. I really like this whiskey. Smells like grape nuts, you know, the American breakfast cereal, which apparently was really common in Canada until about 10, 15 years ago, where it got discontinued. Don't know why. Too many broken teeth, maybe. It was quite hard. Ah, nice malty cereals. Lots of grape nuts going on. What else am I finding today? Glaver, that's right. That's what I found last time. Glaver. It's a Scottish orange liqueur. Yeah, it's totally Glaver. Or just a little sprig of rosemary. An orange rosemary malty loaf of some kind. Oh, yeah. Slancher, I'm going in. Oh. That is so good. And it makes me sad because the official bottling is not good. It's not bad, but it's not this. You know? Oh my. Yeah, it really honestly does make me sad that I've only just discovered that this distillery, cask strength and single cask, can be this magnificent, because this is exactly my style of whiskey. It's very Kleinlichy, it's very Tierninnicky. And in fact, it's got a little bit in common with Kleinlich and Tierninnick, because it is, you know, it is a blending ingredient first and foremost. It was opened in 1896, but unlike Tierninnick and Kleinlich, it's not owned by Diageo anymore. It was for a long time, though. It's now owned by Bacardi, and it's one of the big ingredients in Dewar's. Yeah. Unlike the Capedonic that we just tried, or I just tried at least, the distillery has managed to remain open for the vast majority of its time. In fact, it's, I believe, only been closed ever for 2 years, directly after World War I, when barley rations meant that it couldn't get the raw ingredients it needed, which I feel like is fair and really not its fault. Like I mentioned at the last tasting, unless somehow Aberfeldy actually started World War I. Yes, this is Aberfeldy, and I might have accidentally started a conspiracy theory. I'm fairly sure that's not the case, though. Yeah, Aberfeldy. It's honestly a whiskey I don't normally even think about. But now, anytime someone brings it up, or anytime I'm having lunch at the bar at the Sticky Wicket and I spy that bottle of Aberfeldy behind the counter, I'm gonna have fond memories of this dram. All right. We do have 2 or 3 bottles, maybe 4 of this one available for the digital part of our release. So if you are watching this at home and you're thinking, I want in on this, I would also like to witness Aberfeldy be really good. It's $192.96, which is a great price. And as we mentioned, all of the profits from the SMWS are going to the Canada-Ukraine Foundation. Oh, get it while you can. It's probably not going to last long. All right, what's next? Lose Yourself by the Fire. At first we found notes of pencil shavings and medicinal herbs, then potpourri, sandalwood, paprika and scented hardwood resins. The cask was clearly dominant here, but with water there was more complexity and elegance, bringing notes of mineral oils, date molasses, figs in syrup and natural tar extract. Still, quite a big dram. The palate, when neat, displayed a warm rush of oak spices, black tea tannins, balsamic glaze, boiled lime sweets, and tea tree oil. With water, we noted a generous slice of Iberico ham, treacle sponge cake, pomegranate syrup, and winter mulling spices. This whiskey was matured for 12 years in a bourbon hogshead before being transferred into a first fill Spanish oak Oloroso hogshead. Ooh yeah, this is so cool. I really enjoyed this one. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I really enjoy mixing cask types. American oak, European oak, ex-bourbon, ex-sherry. All four of those things are going to impact the flavour of this whiskey and give it a breadth of flavour and a complexity that you can't really get any other way. And it's a really good distillate too. So the notes on the bottle of this one were specifically quite different from the notes in the book, and sort of really sum it up perfectly. The cask and distillate vie for influence, but the result is an entertaining mashup of dark fruit, wood tannins, chocolate, and earthy heft. And that really does distill the tasting notes down to a perfect little sentence, and it's very accurate. All right, so it's 46.137, that's the code. They got 292 bottles out of the hogshead. It was distilled on the 14th of March 2007 in the Speyside region. It was bottled at 58.0% alcohol. Lovely. Okay. This was, I think, the most interesting colour of all the whiskies that we had this month. It stood out. Lovely. So yeah, on the nose, getting all of those things it mentioned of, the balsamic and the figs and the dates and those kind of flavors. One thing that I found I didn't get on the nose was those pencil shavings. And I often find pencil shavings in whiskies as a note that I don't like, and I often will avoid pencil shaving flavored whiskies. So I'm kind of glad that I don't really get it. But maybe it's one of those whiskey asterisk things for some people, and there's, pencil shavings, but in a good way. Maybe some people have more fond memories of shaving pencils in primary school than I do. It was my least favourite task in school. Actually, no. Cleaning the blackboard. Didn't like that. Like getting covered in chalk dust. Gets all in your hair. Believe it or not, once upon a time I had hair. Yeah, it is a belter of a whiskey, this one. It's big, it's bold, it's in your face, it is unapologetic. It's that wonderful blend, as it said, of candy. I think you mentioned boiled lime sweets. It has that sort of lozenge kind of feel, and ham. If anyone's ever wanted a ham-flavoured cough drop, this is basically that. It's quite wonderful. But I do recall I actually quite like this one with a touch of water, which goes against the common thought around here that bourbon cask whiskies take water better than sherry cask whiskies. There's always, whiskies that break that rule. Yes. Yeah. A couple of drops of water really takes those bigger, more bold notes and sort of spreads them out a little more evenly. It's not that they're any quieter, it's just that they're a little bit more mixed in with everything else. The overall volume has stayed the same, but the levels are a little bit more, So this is another distillery that is very much predominantly blend driven in its production. It's a bit of a powerhouse. It shares its site with Mannockmore, and its warehouses actually hold over 250,000 casks of Diageo whiskies, a Diageo-owned distillery. That is over 175 million bottles worth of whiskey. Wow. So, this is a Glenlossie. Yes, it is. Love a Glenlossie. It's been I think it's been a little while since we've had one. I Ooh, this year's all kind of blending together, to be honest. It feels like a while since we last had a 46, but maybe I'm just imagining that, because honestly, things that happened last week already feel like it was like last year. So we could have had one 3 months ago. Not sure. Anyway, beautiful Glenlossie. Yeah, if you're wanting a big punchy sherry whiskey this month, this is a good pick. And next up, we also have a bit of a sherry whiskey, but very light on the sherry compared to this one. But turned up the volume on the peat. We are going for a marriage made in heaven next. Smoke, soot, sea spray, and salty coastal sherry were the comments fired like a shot. We enjoyed gambas a la plancha in Sanlúcar de Barrameda, where the king prawns are caught straight from the Gulf of Cadiz and grilled to become carabineros, scarlet prawns. A glass of manzanilla sherry with the meal, and it was a marriage made in heaven. After we added a drop of water, the aroma was of a beach at low tide with drying rocks on the seashore, as we now enjoyed a char-grilled tuna steak accompanied by a warm coriander and caper vinaigrette. Following 10 years in an ex-bourbon hogshead, we transferred this whiskey into a refill Spanish oak sherry hogshead, and I was so excited to try this one, I forgot to get the bottle out. It should be right here. It's not. It's, don't fret, I've got it right. There it is. There we go. There we go. All right. It's a nice ring to it, doesn't it? So, this is Distillery 53. Pretty popular. And so popular, in fact, that this is the 433rd that we've had from Distillery 53. Outturn of 245 bottles. This was distilled on Islay on the 1st of September 2008. And yeah, was pulled from the cask at 13 years of age at 59.4% ABV. It's a beautiful, harmonious whiskey, this one. It's the kind of whiskey that if you knew the lyrics, you want to sing along to. Yes. It's interesting. The sherry is so sort of toned down in this whiskey. It's not trying to fight the peat. Not at all. It's not one of those big sherry peat bombs, which is like two titans clashing together. This is the sherry that is holding up the peat. It's taking that peat and shining a new light on it. It's showing you that it's not necessarily this big grisly monster. It's actually quite this beautiful, timid little playful thing. It's a really, really interesting whiskey, this one. I know some people at the tasting were equating this to something akin to the Lagavulin Distillers Edition. It has that same sort of, it's not overly sherried. The sherry is there. It's only a finish. But yeah, it props up the peat nicely. That's lovely. Oh, yeah. So, I want to talk about the tasting notes, but it's hard to because I don't know what on earth they're talking about for most of this one. I don't know where Sanlúcar de Barrameda is. I have no idea what Gambas a la Plancha is. And realistically, I could have looked it up, and maybe I should have. But I don't know if it would help because I've not had those things, and I wanted to share my own interesting memory on this one. So, what does this taste like to me? Interestingly enough, still very Mediterranean. To me, this tastes like Malta. This tastes like a meal I had. Actually, it might have been Gozo, which is a little island just off Malta, still part of the country that's called Malta. But it's very very reminiscent to me of this meal because it has the drink and the main in combination. And the drink I'm thinking of is one of my all-time favourite sodas, which is called Kinney. It's a bit like a Chinotto, but a little lighter. It's a bitter orange aromatic herbs. It's got that herbaceousness to it. But Interesting side note with Kinney, and it's got an interesting thing in common with a Scottish drink, Iron Brew, because Kinney and Iron Brew, I believe to this day, are the two soft drinks which outsell Coca-Cola in their home country, which is super cool. Congratulations to Kinney and Iron Brew from Malta and Scotland, respectively. Anyway, the main was smoked octopus, which was beautiful. I don't think I've ever had smoked octopus anywhere else. But I don't know if it's particularly common in Malta evenly. I think I've only ever had it once. It's a very fond memory. I'm very fond of this whiskey. It's always nice to have a whiskey that reminds you of a holiday that you enjoyed, because you can't take a holiday all the time. All right. So this is available, of course, strathliquor.com/SMWS to members and non-members alike. If you would like to join the SMWS, all you have to do, if you've never been a member before, is purchase any bottle that is $180 or more, and you get a trial period of 1 year membership included in the cost of that bottle to see if our little club is something you would enjoy. And I say our little club, it's actually a massive worldwide club, and your membership gets you perks all around the world. So yeah, for more information, check out smws.ca about what benefits your membership can give you. But yes, you can buy this right now for $279.91, strathliquor.com/SMWS. All right, Sláinte, on to the next whiskey, which, intriguingly, is not peated. Yes, we're going peat to not peat again. However, this one definitely holds up against the peated whiskey because it's 66.9 ABV. This next one is quite the gobsmacker of a whiskey. This is At Home on the Range. We cooked a lentil stew and a Scotch broth using barley, stewed cuts of lamb, root vegetables, and dried pulses. On the palate, neat, however, we had a chili con carne of minced beef, red kidney beans, tomatoes, long grain rice, and plenty of chili powder. Not for the faint-hearted. Following a reduction, we tucked into a plate of Cowboy's Campfire Stew from a black cast iron bean pot before we had a coffee, to which we added brown sugar. This was served with a slice of whiskey-soaked fruitcake on the side. Following 4 years in an ex-Oloroso butt, we transferred this whiskey into a second fill, PX butt. Double sherry, double fun. This is quite the powerhouse whiskey. All right, Home on the Range, what do we got? It is from, remember, the 5th of November. Interestingly, in the same position, the Outturn tasting, as the whiskey that I got to name last month that was called Remember. This is actually from the 5th of November, 2013. It was aged for 8 years in that combination of Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez butts. Like I said, came out of the cask at 66.9 ABV. Its code is 78.62, and they managed to get exactly 500 bottles out of that Pedro Jimenez butt, which might sound like a lot to some people, but honestly, 500 bottles from a butt is a really low outturn. I'm wondering if there was a decent amount of evaporation. Maybe water evaporation, and that's why the ABV kept its heft. All right, time to retry this one if I dare. Oh, I dare. This one maybe fits into the whole spooky whiskey theme as well, because I wouldn't want to accidentally have this whiskey if I wasn't expecting it. This is not the kind of whiskey you want in like a whiskey roulette. You need forewarning on this one. Actually, I say that on the nose, it's relatively tame today. It doesn't have the punchiness that I remember from Sunday's tasting, especially. It smells like a coffee crisp. And if you're not from Canada, and if you're wondering what on earth a coffee crisp is, do yourself a favour, go onto Amazon and buy yourself some coffee crisps imported from Canada, because they are a delightful Canadian delicacy. It's kind of like it's almost like a Kit Kat chunky, but coffee flavoured, but less chocolate. A lighter chocolate to wafer ratio. But yeah, it's a great candy bar. And yeah, I'm weirdly getting coffee on the nose. I don't remember that at all from the previous tastings. Did they mention coffee in the tasting notes? I don't think so. Yeah, I'm not seeing it anywhere. Oh, nice. But yeah, definitely getting that sort of gamey, lammy meat kind of a thing. It's weirdly meaty. Yeah, root vegetables, beans. Yeah, it's got that big, hot, hearty kind of a meal thing going on. Oh, yeah. Yep, that is still 66.9. Don't be fooled by the relatively timid nose today, Adam. It still packs a punch on the palate. But it is still very palatable. I'm going in for another. Has more of a rich caramel up front today as well. Didn't really get that before. That might be the brown sugar. Oh, wait, hang on. Before we had a coffee to which we added brown sugar. It does mention coffee in the tasting notes. You'd think when I'm reading them out loud during these videos, I'd pay more attention to them, wouldn't you? Still smells like a coffee crisp. I want a coffee crisp now. I might cycle past the 7-Eleven and pick myself up a coffee crisp on the way home. Ooh, all right. Yeah, 8 years aged. It frankly feels like an 8-year-old whiskey in many ways, and there's nothing wrong with that. The idea that older whiskey is default better is just not true. Young whiskey can also be absolutely incredible, as the SMWS has proven time and time again. I've had 25-year-old whiskies be outshined by 4 years old. And at the same time, I've had 32-year-old grain whiskies completely outshine 12-year-old Speyside sides too. Like, age isn't the be-all and end-all of the quality of a whiskey. It can be an indicator, but it just denotes a kind of style. And if you want something that is big, full-flavoured and punchy, well, maybe you actually prefer younger whiskey, and there's nothing wrong with that. Certainly better for the wallet in many cases. This is no exception. All right. I do remember quite enjoying this one with water, so I will be a good boy and add a couple of drops of water to this one. Yeah, a little less feisty. Even I know I said it was relatively timid, calm on the nose today comparatively to previous, but even after water, like straight away, it feels more friendly. Yeah, a little bit more of a earthiness on the nose after water. I feel like they've added mushrooms to that stew now. And interestingly, counter to that, on the palate, touch sweeter after water. Oh, that's really good. I definitely prefer this one with water, I have to say. Which is good news, because that just means that you get more whiskey out of the bottle. This is whiskey concentrate. Yes, this may well be a 700ml bottle, but if you include the fact that you can add water to make it stretch a little further, it's more like a litre. That's great. It's great value, because this whiskey is $219.91 available right now at strathliquor.com, but I haven't revealed where it's from yet. And it's an interesting distillery, because we didn't have really any in the SWS for ages until quite recently. And it's cool that we're actually getting a run of them, it seems. Maybe we've had two, maybe we'll have a third. But interesting story, it was founded in 1825 by a guy who was bad at naming things. Not the distillery's got a great name. But there's a guy called John MacDonald who passed on the distillery to his son in 1856, to Donald MacDonald. Why? Why did you do that, John? Why would you call your son Donald when the surname is MacDonald? That sounds ridiculous. Also, it does sound a bit like Ronald McDonald, which isn't... You couldn't have known that, though. Don't worry, I'll let you off that one. Anyway, Donald MacDonald was equally bad at naming things, because they actually built a second distillery next to this one. And instead of calling it number 2, like they did with Glen Grant 2 or anything, they did something even weirder. Actually, naming it number 2 isn't weird, it's just kind of lazy. They did something really weird with this one, though. They just cut the name in half and named it only the second half of the name of the original one. They named the new distillery Nevis. Yeah, this is a Ben Nevis. Once upon a time, there was a Ben Nevis, and next door, there was a Nevis. Yeah. Great distillery, though. Most of it goes to Japan these days. It is owned by Nika, one of the first distilleries in Scotland to actually be owned by a Japanese company, which is kind of cool. It's quite common now. Suntory owns, got 5, I think, distilleries. Is that right? Let's see. They've got Bowmore, Laphroaig, Ardmore, Auchintosh, and Glengarry. I think that's all of them. Huh. Anyway, yeah, this is owned by Nika. It's actually used by Nika in some of their pure malt whiskies, which are not single malts, but more like blended malts, where they actually do use Scottish whiskey as well. Whiskies like Nika from the Barrel contain a lot of Ben Nevis. Yeah, $2.19.91 at strathlecker.com/SMWS, and that leads us on to our final whiskey of this outturn. Yes, I know, normally we have 7 whiskies. The LDB lost a case. It'll show up at some point, and when it does, we'll release it as part of a future outturn. Sorry. Sometimes the paperwork just gets confusing for people, and these things happen. That's okay. But the next whiskey is the Trinidadian Ileach from Kennethmont, and that name just gave me this picture of this idea of the dreadlocked Scotsman. For some reason, it's a weirdly common thing. For some reason, they're often fire breathers as well, or maybe that's just the 2 that I've known. Either way, they often look a bit like this. At first nosing, we detected seawater, sharp medicines, grapefruit, and green olives in pickling brine, some heady freshness of ozone, along with metal polish, wood ashes, and lime juice, powerfully coastal in many ways, reminiscent of Islay whiskies. Reduction brought crab sticks, pasta water, langoustines, I said langanistas, that's just a type of sausage, but no, langoustines, on a barbecue grill, oily mechanical rags, frying pancetta, and hot chimichurri. The palate was initially superbly tarry, with layers of farmyard funk and a few notes of bicycle inner tube betraying the rum influence. Clouds of damp blue peat smoke, burning wood embers, anchovy paste, soot, and carbolic acid. A huge whiskey. With water, the smoke took on a sharper edge, and notes of pure seawater, smoked barley wine, capers and sardines, doused in smoked olive oil, and lemon juice all presented themselves. Matured in a bourbon barrel for 7 years before being transferred into a refill ex-Trinidad rum barrel. I popped the wrong whiskey out. This is a marriage made in heaven. What we want is the Trinidadian Ileach from Kennethmont. There we go. All right, so grab a glass. Ooh, this is a cool whiskey. This, you might have already seen, this is Distillery 66, which is one of my all-time favorite distilleries. And this is a 66, like no other 66 I've ever had, like not even close. I've never had a 66 that is this peated. In fact, the SMWS has deemed this to be heavily peated in their flavor profiles. Usually it's lightly peated. Don't know what's going on here. I'm almost wondering, I mentioned in the last whiskey that this distillery is owned by the same company that owns Laphroaig. I'm wondering if there was a mix-up and maybe the barrels got swapped or something, and maybe this is actually a Laphroaig. But no, Laphroaig's not quite like this either. This is a truly, truly unique dram. It does have that iodine hit, though. I'm wondering. So it says initial cask ex-bourbon barrel, right? But it doesn't say first fill, which means it's probably had another whiskey in it before this whiskey. And I know for an absolute fact that this distillery uses ex-Laphroaig casks in a lot of their official bottlings. I'm wondering if that's what's happening here. I'm wondering if this is actually originally from Distillery 66, but put into a cask that used to contain Distillery 29, and then put into a cask that used to contain, I don't know if there's a distillery number for the refill, for the Trinidadian rum cask that was used. But maybe it's not a rum that's actually bottled by the SMWS. But either way, a Trinidadian rum cask at the end. That would start to put the puzzle pieces together a little for me. That would start to make sense. All right, so yeah. The tasting notes on this one are pretty spot on for my experience, I have to say. That it does have that sharp sort of metallic lime juice kind of a thing, especially on the nose. Iodine, absolutely. And yeah, that farmyard funk as well. It feels like a tale of two different peats, Highland and Isla, with a weird splash of tropical fruit just hanging out there in the background. Not at the forefront. The rum cask is not the driving force of this whiskey. The peat is absolutely the driving force of this whiskey, but the rum cask is definitely playing a part. Capers and sardines doused in smoked olive oil. Yeah. Very cool. They don't really mention the tropical fruit aspect of this whiskey at all in the tasting notes, but I'm definitely getting it. I'm getting like papaya, maybe mango. It's like a really weird pizza where they were going to put pineapple on it, but instead they put mango and papaya. But they also put capers and anchovies on it. And yeah, I mean, whereas a ham and pineapple pizza is a wonderful thing, the idea of an anchovy mango pizza is somewhat challenging conceptually. But this whiskey is anything to go by. It might actually be really quite good. That's my next request for the next Sticky Wicket menu. If chef's watching this, I would like to try a mango anchovy pizza on the menu, please. Okay. 66.228. They got 218 bottles out of this refill rum barrel. A bottle at 62.2% ABV. It was distilled on the 10th of September 2012 in the Highlands. Bottled at 9 years aged. Distillery 66. Another distillery that was actually founded in 1898. And, like I said, one of my absolute all-time favourites. This is an Ardmore. And an Ardmore like no other Ardmore. Ardmore was actually created as a blending ingredient first and foremost, and to this day it still is. It's the teacher's blend sort of key ingredient. It's what gives teachers that little peaty hit. But I love it as a single malt. I really, really do. And the SMWS is probably the biggest influence on how much I love Ardmores. But that being said, it is available from a variety of different sources, including an official bottling, which is good value. I'll give it that. It's really inexpensive, but I would prefer one bottle of this than 5 bottles of the official, or 4 bottles, whatever the math works out to be, of the official bottling any day. And that's something I'm learning as I'm getting older and wiser. Drink less but better, and that's a solid advice for anyone who's into whiskey. Your health will thank you. Your wallet will thank you, and your taste buds will thank you. Drink less but better. It's a good message. And if you want to really take on that message and you want to drink less but better with an Ardmore, you can do so. strathliquor.com/SMWS. This one is available at time of recording. I think 2 or 3 bottles were left for the digital release. $212.09, which is really bloody good for this whiskey. Yeah. Well, it's been a wonderful outturn. I'll leave you with a little bit of music and this wonderful screen with all of the new releases. If you have any questions, as always, please reach out to me. You can get me at adam@thestrath.ca. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Hopefully we'll see some of you who are watching this video in person at the next Outturn tasting. Of course, tickets for that are available at strathliquor.com/SMWS. And to those of you who can't make it to our in-person tastings, thank you for joining us here online at Drinking Out Loud. Check out our other videos. Slanchivar, take it easy. I'll see you next month for another episode.